Hey guys, this is James, and today we're going to talk about the most fundamental concept of JavaScript, inheritance chains. I know many tutorials, they will begin to talk about JavaScript with something like all different types of variables and different APIs. But I think I personally prefer to talk about the inheritance chains because actually all the JavaScript logic and codes will be revolve around the object or inheritance calls. So getting to know that first will clearly make a better understanding of JavaScript. Okay, let's get started. So what's the inheritance chains? Actually, it can be observable from the browsers. If in the console of the browsers, we type something like console, yeah, all right, dir, and your variable x represents your variable. And then automatically you will see there will be something, there are many things maybe. There will be one thing that will be universal, that is proto. So if you use, okay, we define the variable as a. If you use a dot protos, then you get something. Actually, this one is the object. Why? Because you can see there's a lot of method and properties inside of it. So actually explained one thing. When we define something in JavaScript, for instance, a string, we automatically can use a dot to string to lowercase. We can directly use this method of functions. Why? Because we can see that if a is a string, in the proto of a, there is this method to lowercase. So the first thing we have to know that because we have the inheritance, so a can directly use any method in the proto. And since a is since a dot proto is object, is some object, so an object also have its proto, right? Because anything in JavaScript have its proto. So object also have a proto. That is, since usually the proto doesn't have a name, so we still use a to reference it. So that's a proto dot proto. And this one refers to a specific object. And okay, then it's still object, right? So does it also have its proto? Actually, no, because it's already a specific object. Everything will be the exact same. So if we get to the specific object, then this inheritance chain has been put into an end. The end of the inheritance chain will be this specific object. And if we can see in the object, we can see that it has something like a get, set, etc. Those kind of method. So since this one is the ultimate terminal of the chain, and it has those kind of method, it means any variables in JavaScript can use this kind of method. Okay, so we have found the proto chain. This is kind of the inheritance chains. Just remember, in this chains, it's always a object when it comes to proto, and the disregard of a, what kind of a is, whether it's a string, a function, always it has its proto. And second, we talk about the construction functions. Proto is an object. It has a property named constructor. This one will link to a function. That is our construction function or constructor. And also the function can link back. to, because the function, all everything is object in JavaScript, right? So function also is a object, and this object has a dot prototype property. And this one also link back to this proto, okay? Prototype link back to proto. And the this function is very important in JavaScript. Why? Because it's a construct function. It can construct a variable. So first we focus on A. If there's A, there's always a proto. And if we want to get the function, the constructor function of this variable A, then we have to use a.proto.constructor. And different A have different constructors. For instance, if it's a string, it has a construct function named string with capital S, number, a function with capital N, object with a capital O. Okay, I have to really emphasize that all those are specific preset functions of JavaScript. And with those functions, we can also link back to the A we created by using new. And then we can call that A is an instance of those constructor. So if A is a string, we say that A is instance of string capital. If A is a number, we say that A is instance of this number function with capital, okay? And there's another thing very important. Before call or executing the functions, and if we want to make a instance of the function, and then we want the instance to inherit some properties or methods from, any of the, because a function can create a various of its instance, and we want every instance can re-inherit any specific functions or method, the thing we have to do, and it's a common practice in JavaScript. We should first, this is a construct function, we have to define the prototype, means that we directly access this proto and we define some method in these protos. And then when A, for instance, these functions func, and then any A or B or C that are the instance of these constructors can always find this function here. So that is a way to really important to use the inheritance. Okay, so actually we can have a summary here. So first we focus on the instance that is A. A always have a proto, and with proto we can also find its constructor. The constructor then can link to A by creating, using new and constructor functions to create its own instance. It can create a lot of instances. And also the constructor can have a property named prototype linked to proto, prototype linked to proto. And always a dot proto is an object. Anything have its proto, also this one have its own proto that is a specific object. And since it's specific object, so it's the end of our inheritance chain. And now let's have some example. Let's focus on the function and object. As you see, I use the capital letters. It means that those are the constructors here. So the first question is that the function, since it's a construct function, so what's the prototype of it? Of course, it's a specific object that have tons of the functions like core or method or properties inside. So if we use the new function to define its instance, then we can also, all the functions can share those kind of method. Okay. And how about the protos of this proto? It will, since this one is already object, so it will link to a specific object we have talked about. Okay, so that's the case for the function. And then for object, this one is a little bit specific because the object is already a construct functions. It will link to the function, to the the prototype of it is already the specific object. So there's nothing more here, no. So, and any, of course, object, but also it has its protos linked to this specific object. So for other things, maybe it will, the chain is a little bit longer, like array, like functions, but for object, the chain is just like this. Ultimately can link to the ultimate specific object. Yeah, so I think that's also one expected to say that everything is objects in JavaScript. So that's all. And I have just to mark that just this is very important. And then for any case or any, codings, we have to remember how the different association or links among the functions, among the protos, among the instance of the functions. Okay, that's for today. Thank you. See you next.